Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast. Today's entrepreneurs are mental athletes that have to know about the mind and how to keep it fit. Our goal is to increase our resilience against stress and anxiety, optimize our productivity, motivation, and optimism by learning about the human mind through psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior. I'm your host Ozan. I'm a founder who has experienced the challenges of launching and growing a business and a keen student of human behavior over the last 15 years. I'll share with you what I know and learn. Hundreds of impactful, behavior-changing ideas are waiting to be discovered by us. Let's begin now. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Mental Fitness Podcast. I'm your host Ozan, and today's topic is from a suggestion by one of the audience members, Lucy, and it's about time management and goals and habits. I think it's a really interesting time to talk about this because I'm in the middle of reading or listening to the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it starts off with a very interesting story. I can confidently refer that book or recommend that book. So it's definitely not a waste of time. So if you're looking for a new audiobook, I think that's a good one. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Not affiliated in any way, not promoting him. I just think the way it starts and some of the reminders in the book are very, very valuable. And it's actually really interesting because it's not very often that I change my mind about a thing that I have previously researched in depth and have an established opinion. And one of them is setting goals, the importance of setting goals. So if you go to authors that are the proponents of systems like OKRs, like objectives and key results, I think John Doerr was his name, and this is a system used by Intel, Google, and others. Also, there are a lot of other authors, thought leaders out there who say a lot of good things about setting goals. And actually, my father was one of them. He was a teacher, and at a very early age, he actually coached me to set my own goals. And I think it was one of the most inspirational things that anybody has ever done for me. And that actually allowed me to be the valedictorian and the student with the best grades, getting into best colleges and so on. And because I owned the goals that I set rather than see them as mandated missions that were given by somebody else. So when you set goals and when you have aspirational targets, they are very useful. But with Atomic Habits and with James Clear's perspective, I kind of now realize it is only half the battle, and it's sometimes it's not always even the best thing to set goals. It's quite curious, and I think the reason why is when we set a goal, and this is something I'm beginning to realize as I come into my as I go into my late young years or early middle age. I guess I'm 35 now, and something I realize is when you are in the habit of setting goals, and if you see your life as a series of goalposts you reach, then that kind of life actually, although it might increase your chances of being successful in some areas, it's also a good recipe for a unhappy life in which you don't have the mental resilience to actually sustain the effort. And I think that's what's important, to sustain the effort, to keep working on the things that you are working as an entrepreneur, and while doing that, still live a very good, decent, pleasurable, rich life. So I think that's the goal. When we are in the habit of setting ambitious goals, then this automatically creates the mindset we see happiness as something that is attained as and if we reach those goals. And this is, I think, a bad habit, the best way to put it. So in my case, if I'm having this internal dialogue in which I think, okay, I need to make myself reach this amount of revenue, I need to have this many employees, I need to have this much reach, and so on. And once I have that, I will be able to relax, I will be able to enjoy myself. So if I have this kind of an internal dialogue, then it's actually quite harmful, possibly, to my well-being, to my mental health. Now, this is the perspective James Clear has provided. The alternative approach he suggests is, rather than making goals the primary objectives, make building good habits the primary objective. So you're in that state of flow and that automatic way of being productive, rather than pushing yourself to do something. And I buy that. Because I buy this idea, because I've also experienced it as I age, as I come into my mid 30s. I kind of realize, I see a glimpse of a potential unhappy future in which I keep setting ambitious goals and I keep postponing the ideal version of that life in my head, and like making those dreams contingent upon reaching those goals. And I think that can be a recipe for a real unhappy life. So rather than center everything around goals, yes, have goals, but rather try to center things around the right type of habits, productive habits you do day by day. So that's the first thing I wanted to share with you. Anyways, I thought it was inspiring. I liked it, so I thought I would share it with you. So let me talk about what works best for me in terms as an entrepreneur who also studies human behavior in terms of time management, goals, and habits. So the first principle that I go by is I try to manage my creative and productive energy rather than manage my time, if that makes sense. So the idea is, I know myself because I've been taking a look at this, and I usually have around 8 hours of really productive, creative energy throughout the day. 8 hours equivalent, but I don't really necessarily measure that in terms of that 8 hours. So if I'm on a task that is very cognitively taxing and it's quite difficult, then I know that I might deplete that creative, productive energy in 4 hours in one typical day. Or otherwise in a different day, if I'm doing something that is not very cognitively difficult, doesn't require that much creativity, difficult decision making, and so on, then by the end of 9-10 hours I'll still have more energy. So it depends. Sometimes having a lot of meetings, trying to convince people, really making, for example, if I do a recording when I'm interviewing someone, it's a high performance thing, because I need to pay attention to 3 or 4 things at the same time. So the key takeaway from here is, know how much productive energy you have, although that is difficult to quantify because perhaps it's inherently unquantifiable because it's a qualitative thing. I don't know, but the key takeaway is, know how much productive and creative energy you usually have each day and try to optimize around that rather than time. The second thing is that appreciate that you are as with your physical body and your mental state, you are a system with needs. And just like physiological needs, you have mental and emotional needs. I think we get this quite wrong. Yes, we are in charge of this system, which is our body and mind, but it does not mean, and I would like to emphasize, it does not mean we get to set all the rules of how that system works. I think this is incredibly important, and that's why I will repeat this. Just because you're in charge of the system, which is your body and mind, you don't get to set all the rules of how it works. So there are rules and there are limitations and there are needs of your physiology, your body, and your mental state, your mind and your psychology. You, as the person who's in charge, like with that prefrontal cortex, that frontal part of the brain that says this is me and that has that self-awareness, yes, you're at the wheel. Yes, you're leading this vehicle, Yes, you are the leader, you are in charge of it, but you don't get to set all the rules. You have to be cognizant of the needs and provide that system with those needs. I think understanding this is crucial because a lot of people tend to neglect the needs of that system, both physically and mentally and emotionally, which will cause problems. The third thing that actually works really well for me in terms of time management, goals, and habits is knowing that I have two different mindsets when it comes to planning and executing the work. So I call them, one of them is the night Ozan, and the other one is the day Ozan. So it's I have the night version of myself and the day version of myself. It's quite kind of like a gamified, light-hearted way of approaching this. So it's fun as well. So the night Ozan is the one that goes and thinks, I don't care what the day Ozan is gonna suffer. I don't care how difficult he's gonna find the work. I really don't give anything about him. So the night Ozan is really focused on the future. Is really strategic, wants success and so on. Is not a slacker, is a perfectionist. So the night Ozan does the planning and does most of the planning. Does the to-do lists and the weekly plans and the monthly plans and so on. Now, the day Ozan is a realist rather than a perfectionist because he realizes there are going to be meetings throughout the day. He's not going to be able to stick to the plan night Ozan made for him 100%, and he's okay with this. He'll do his best, but he'll also try to check the needs of the system and stop when those needs are not met. He'll try to optimize for a positive experience and a good structure to the day, and enjoy the day and enjoy the things he's doing as well. The day Ozan is the one who's gonna say, you know what, this is a to do. I get this, but I need to take a break, and I'll stop now and stop that. So it's almost back and forth, passing between the night Ozan and the day Ozan. Like it's this two personas within me that almost speak to each other. They speak through notes, of course, like an A4 clean sheet of paper, or on online tools. The night Ozan does the planning and the day Ozan does the execution. And I found that actually splitting these two is really beneficial for me because the planner works better like that and the executioner works better that way as well. The fourth thing I would like to share with you is really going into some neuroscience and understanding what dopamine is and how dopamine works. A lot of people think, and I think they're not mistaken to think like that. They think that dopamine is for reward. Well, this is only partially true. A lot of the main dominant way of thinking, the ideology and the hype around dopamine in the 90s, early 2000s and so on, really positioned as this pleasure neurotransmitter or hormone. But that is indeed not the case. Indeed, dopamine is for motivation. So we know the peak moment of dopamine neurotransmitter levels is not the moment of when you reach the goal, but it is before that. So imagine you're craving a hamburger, right? So the maximum dopamine hit is not when you take a bite, it's just before taking the bite. And the reason for that is the dopamine actually activates your body to take action, to order that food in that case. And in more traditional times, it actually motivates you to actually get the meat and do everything and cook for yourself and so on. And same with work. So you want the reward of a good earning potential, good invoice, or increasing number of customers and so on. So that is something that you really want. And that is why dopamine is there. Dopamine is going to reward you and motivate you until you get that. So I think understanding is really important because once you understand this, you can actually hack yourself, hack your life, hack your daily surroundings in a way that's going to make use of this advantage. And the way it works is you set pleasurable goals and rewards at the end of the things that's the tasks, the things that you need to be executed, and so on. And the last one, I think this is I think the sixth one or the fifth one, is to understand willpower is a limited resource. So if you're in the same day, if you are trying to lose weight and using some of your willpower on balancing what you eat, if you're at the same time trying to be really active and run each day, you're using a certain portion of your willpower to do that. So if you are having a very difficult relationship with your loved one, but you don't want to overreact dramatically to a situation, then again you're using certain willpower. If you're having a tough meeting with a manager or like having challenges with clients, then you're using a certain amount of willpower. So each of these actually like is your prefrontal cortex, your you part, showing restraint and that willpower, but it is a limited resource. And in one of those, it's not possible to do all of those at the same time. It is gonna run out because it's only a limited amount, and it's usually much less than people think. That's why people make commitments. Say I'm gonna do 100 push-ups every day, but they can only do it for 3 days because that willpower runs out eventually. So the last principle is, so this is a prerequisite to actually understand the last principle. Your willpower is a limited resource. And the last principle is design your visual space free of distractions, so you do not rely on your willpower to make decisions, but you rely on your habits to actually do the right thing throughout the day. So if you have high calorie, high sugar food just next to you, or if you have the coffee machine that does your perfect coffee with the press of a button, and you want to cut down on your caffeine consumption and so on. So this is it's not gonna work. It's quite the wrong way to approach it. You cannot stop yourself. You should not try to stop yourself from drinking that third or fourth cup of coffee just through willpower alone, if that's a problem for you. What you should do is design your visual landscape so that you're not reminded of the fact that you need to drink coffee or you want to drink coffee, and make it kind of more difficult in a way. If you, for example, switch to hand grinding your beans rather than using an automatic coffee maker, then that would for sure not cut down your coffee consumption to zero, but definitely reduce it enough so that it is not as destructive as a habit as used to be. So that's kind of the general logic of that. It is the same with your workspace. Get rid of distractions. For example, I do like gaming, and I'm not ashamed to share that. So what I try to do is I try to give myself a signal between, because I do live in London and we do have quite a limited space, as a lot of people who live in London do, which means I use the same room for gaming and my office work throughout the day. So what I do is I try to transition the two phases. And one idea that I'm experimenting now is actually changing the decor and the organization of my desk when I'm gaming versus when I'm working. And I found that it works quite well, actually. During the day, you are not reminded of the fact that you would be playing a game. You could be playing a game at that second, and so on. So these are some general principles as well as what really works for me. So thanks for tuning in. Hope this was useful to you. I'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.